Okay, we're live. We've got a big guest today on the Rodcast. Guy who scored the biggest goal in Canadian hockey history. That's all. Not much. Hang with us. Welcome to the Rodcast.
The Rodcast with Rod Black, brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win. Now here's your host, Rod Black.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rodcast. Rod Black with you, North Star Sports. So glad that you're with us for this edition, because today we're talking about one of the greatest moments in Canadian sports history, if not the greatest moment. Certainly the greatest goal. Yes, we're talking about this. Yeah, in 1972. Where were you in 72? Maybe you weren't born. I know where I was. And by the way, this might have been the greatest Canadian jersey ever worn. But we remember the words of Foster Hewitt when he said, "Henderson took a wild step for the fill. There's a shot, another shot. He scores! Henderson has scored for Canada!" Or something like that. He kind of screamed it out, and a nation absolutely went crazy and continues to celebrate 50 years later. Our guest today on the Rodcast, Paul Henderson. September 28th, 1972, and it will be a day that will live forever in the hearts and minds of Canadian hockey fans and this fan, because it was my 10th birthday. And Paul Henderson gave me the greatest gift ever, and what a gift it was to hockey. And here he is. Hello, Henny.
Good morning, buddy.
It's so great to see you. How are you doing? How's the golf game?
Doing pretty well. Still got a little battle with cancer, but married to a wonderful woman, got a great family, and just very, very blessed. And a lot of days my golf game is very good. Other days, not so good. So you take the good with the bad, bud.
Yeah, well, I want to talk to you later about your family and your health and everything that you've gone through, but I do want to say happy anniversary. 50 years, Paul Henderson, since you scored for Canada. 50 years. Can you believe? Time flies when you're having fun, celebrating a great goal.
Well, like you know, I start September 28th by singing happy birthday to you every year.
It is the great. I got to tell you. So for the viewers and listeners, I get a phone call and it comes up, and every year, because of a good friend of ours, Bruce Bowser, of moving fame and AMJ fame, I got a chance to really get to know Paul Henderson as not only a hockey hero of mine, but a great friend. And that friendship is carried on, but it is the greatest gift of all. Every year, Paul Henderson, that guy right there, calls me on my birthday. And guess what, Henny? It's going to be 60 this year for me. So but hey, I hope I look as good as you do. You're almost 80 years old. Look at you. You look like you're 19 again.
You're going to have to go to confession on that one, buddy.
But happy anniversary. It truly has a day gone by that somebody hasn't mentioned something to you about the goal of the century, the goal of a lifetime?
Oh, yes. Nowadays, I mean, the circle, the last couple of years, my circle is not very, like, we just can't go to restaurants.
Yeah.
My oncologist has told me you need to be really careful. And, like I have cancer. And so we've been but it's time flies. It just, Ellen and I, you go to bed at night, goodness gracious, another day is gone. But the secret to life, though, and I'm what you're aware of this, get up in the morning and try to be a blessing to other people and then enjoy it. And I'll take my problems. I don't want anybody else's problems. I'll take my own. And I pray every day, Lord, keep me safe from myself and the devil. These are the two people that I have to worry about most.
Yeah, you are a great man of faith, and you are a great man. You have given your time and your heart and your family's time to so many charities through the years. But and again, I do want to chat about that. But let's go back to 72 if we can. And I don't know how much you relive it or if you still dream about it. People would dream about it happening to them. It happened to you. Never mind the goal. And the funny thing, Henny, is we're at an age now where there are a lot of kids who've seen the grainy video and they don't quite understand the world the way it was, what happened in that series, how much hype there was around the series, how many people didn't know how good the Russians could be. And they also didn't know that you not only scored a huge goal in game 8 of the Summit Series, but you scored huge goals in the last 3 games throughout the entire series. Take us back, though, to that time and what it was like. You knew where you were in 72.
Well, when we lost the first game in Moscow, I said to my wife after that game, if we don't win the last 3 games, we're going to be known as the greatest losers in the history of Canadian hockey. And I think every guy on that team understood what we were up against. But I still remember Harry Sinden, after we lost the first game, he said, gentlemen, there's 3 games left. Let's concentrate on winning game 6. And if we win game 6, we'll worry about game 7. Win game 7, worry about game 8. And that was a wonderful speech because I think that's what we did. But the thing, Rod, at no point did we ever believe that we couldn't beat them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we lost the first game over there because of terrible refereeing in the 3rd period. But but I thought that was the first game where we'd really outplayed them. But the 3rd period, the penalties we took were too much to overcome. And so we just took it one game at a time. And by this time, Rod, we were down to the basic team that was going to play. Mm-hmm. And it was a tough situation for the guys that couldn't play. We weren't winning, and we got Hall of Famers that couldn't get in the lineup. And so there was a lot of tension here or there, but we finally got down. We knew the rules we had. Like our line was the shutdown line. We had to play against Karlomov's line. And never once did I ever think about scoring a winning goal or anything like that. I went out there and they were not going to score against us. In fact, I was the highest plus in the team because Ronnie Ellis and I were great defensive players and we were not we're not a liability. But for me, with my game, see, my speed and my shot were the best thing. And when you're playing with great players, you get into the open, they'll give you the puck. I mean, the only time I ever went through the whole team was the goal I scored in the 7th game. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, I was anticipative. But here's the other thing, Rod, really interesting. We go over there, and before we were on the ice, the first practice, John Ferguson was the assistant coach. And we're skating around, and he come over to me and he said, Henny, we need you to come up big over here. Your line has really been playing well, but you know how to score goals and you're quick. And so we just want to let you know that we're really counting on you. And, we had all these Hall of Famers, and it's amazing, Rod, what just a little bit of encouragement at the right time does for you. And I come home and I told Eleanor, can you imagine this guy, they say they need me to come up big. But the other thing, too, I got a concussion the first game in Moscow, went down, but thank goodness I was wearing a helmet.
And by the way, only 3 Canadian players wore helmets, which was very unique because all the Russians wore those right here, this helmet here. All the Russians wore it. Like, of course, Wayne Gretzky made it famous, but all the Russians wore that helmet, which became a famous helmet. But it was you, Red Berenson, and Stan Mikita who only had the helmets on your team. But take me back. I did not know that you suffered a concussion.
Oh yeah, the guy tripped me. I went into the boards backwards. And the funny part about Eleanor, what a great wife she is.
Oh, beautiful lady.
Down there, and she said, "Get up, you sucker! Get up! I'm not staying in that hotel by myself. Get up!" It's what a great woman she is. But anyway, I come in. Jim Murray, the doctor, looks over me and examines me. He says, "Paul, you got a concussion. You got to take your equipment off." And Harry Sinden came in and said, "Henny, the doc says you got a concussion. You can't play." And I said to him, "Harry, don't do this to me. please let me play. I'll take care of myself. I had a pounding headache. And he looked at me and he said, Henny, we sure as hell need you. And if you want to play, I'm not going to stop you. And I said, well, give me some time here. And so I came out about 5 or 6 minutes into the next period. But today I'd never been allowed back on the ice. But that's one of the reasons I'm an idiot today.
No, you are not. No, you are not. But I did not know that. So let's start at the series beginning. So the first 4 games, Prime Minister Elliott Trudeau drops the puck in Montreal. Everybody is anticipating. I think everybody in Canada says, okay, these are the NHLers. And of course, you guys get off to a good start and you lose that game. And then there was kind of this panic, not maybe within the team, but certainly across Canadian media at the time. Who are these Russians? What happened? Then you go to the next game, you win the next game, you tie in Winnipeg, you go to Vancouver and you lose in Vancouver. And your teammate, Phil Esposito, speaking of speeches, delivers the speech of a lifetime. Take me through those first 4 games leading up to Espo's speech and how that might have galvanized your team. Certainly did for the nation, it seemed.
Well, Phil scored right off the bat in Montreal. I scored at the 6-minute mark. Came back to the bench and I looked at Ronnie Ellis and Bobby Clark, my 2 line mates, and they remember me saying this. I said, this is going to be a very long series. We knew we were in trouble. The physical conditioning, their skill level, and they broke every rule in the book. They come up the ice, and if they didn't like what they looked at, they turned back. You played for punch in black, and you ever went backwards, you were on the bench. You never, ever did that. And I felt sorry for Ken Dryden. Every time he thought they were going to shoot, they passed the bloody thing.
And passed backwards a lot. They passed backwards. Well, you guys never really saw that before.
And I felt sorry for him. But the biggest mistake Harry made, he only dressed 5 defensemen and asked for the second period. You saw they just came at us. Our poor defensemen were just bagged. And so we lose there. But we come back to Winnipeg, or we come back to Toronto, and I would suggest to you the best goal ever scored at Maple Leaf Gardens Ice was a shorthanded goal that Peter Mojave scored in the 3rd period. And we were shorthanded. And if they'd have scored in that power play and we'd have lost that game, we were not. But anyway, and so we go to Winnipeg, and we were leading in the 3rd period, and then they put this rookie line out there, scored 2 goals in the 3rd period. We tie. But we go to Vancouver, but what happened? Billy Goldsworthy, they took 2 penalties right off the bat. They scored 2 power play goals. We're down 2-0, and we got to open it up. And of course, as soon as we did that, but we didn't really play well in Montreal. And then Phil, and the interesting thing, Phil never even saw that interview. None of us saw it at all, because we come back to Toronto. But Phil was, and I would say to you, well, we had 4 captains, but Phil was the leader on and off the ice. I mean, he's just a personality, and I really believe in 1972 he was the best forward in all of hockey.
He was coming off a 76 goal season that year. His Bruins were incredible. So I think Espo may have reacted as well, because I don't think you guys were used to it. Canadian fans were booing Team Canada. And I think that's what kind of got Phil a little, that hot Italian blood got him a little riled up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Johnny Esau, let him go on. Yeah. Johnny just sat there and he said, we are disappointed. And I mean, I think the Canadian fan, holy crap. Like, they should have showed us that. I wish I didn't see it for years afterwards, but that's who he was. He just took charge. Yeah. And I would suggest to you, the 3rd period he played in the last game in Moscow was the best period of hockey any NHL player had played up till 1972. He took that whole team on their back, and he got a goal and 2 assists in the 3rd period. Is that any good?
Oh, yeah. And he's still such a character. So you go to Moscow. A sports team had never been behind the Iron Curtain. Take me back to that time. The Cold War was on. For, again, viewers and listeners who this might seem a little foreign to them. There was a Cold War on at the time. People hadn't been over there before. Was there any worry for any of the players going over there? We heard about some of the bugging escapades, maybe some espionage that went on, some spying behind the scenes. What was it like to go to Russia? I'm sure you had never visited Russia prior to that.
No, none of us had. And it was a new experience. My wife was petrified. They had KBG, like on the floors. You had to hand your key in every time. And there was the door was set back, and there was people who would look around the corner. My wife was freaked out. And then that's it. When I went down there and I called them, yes, get up, you sucker. I'm not staying in that room by myself. The food was awful. I mean, it really, really was. And maybe it was purpose. I don't know. The only thing that I liked was the borscht. But but they became capitalists in a hurry. We'd taken a lot of meat over there, like steaks and that, and the wives would have enough too. But the Canadians they were paying the Russians to get a steak. But that wasn't bad enough. But I'll tell you what, Rod, when they stole our beer, that was war. That was the end of it right there.
What happened? What happened there? Like, I've heard that. That's infamous.
All the Canadians there were buying the stuff that was supposed to be for us. But anyway, my wife took a whole suitcase of food over there. She grew up in the farm, and we'd heard that things were not good. So we had all kinds of people. She took cheese and cookies and peanut butter. Peanut butter was a big thing over there. Anyway, but Rod, the thing about it, communism doesn't work.
Yeah.
We went when we were going from the airport to the hotel, never saw a house, not one. And you'd see the apartment buildings, and you would see a lamp hanging down with a light bulb, not even a shade on it. Apartment after apartment the same way. And oh my gracious, this.
Were you, did they recognize the Soviet people on the streets? Because they loved hockey. We didn't know a lot about their hockey system beyond the fact they won a lot of amateur gold medals, but we didn't know them as pros. Did the Soviet fans recognize many of the North American players? Probably because of your hair, mostly because you guys all had the mullets back then.
Well, I had a deal with Riviera slacks, and I got 12 pair of slacks in the spring and 12 pair in the fall. And I had
Were they big flares?
Pardon?
Were they flared pants? The big flares?
Yeah. Oh, for sure back then. And I must have taken 8 different and all bright colors, and they'd stare at me. And in 72, everything was either brown or gray with them. You saw any colors. And I think they woke up they saw us, and these plaid pants of mine, I had all kinds of them. They'd just stand up, they'd take pictures of me. So, but then we went back in 74, there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
In those 2 years, there was more colors and that kind of stuff. But it was a learning experience. The thing about them is incredible museums. Man, their history is there, and I enjoy. And the Russian, we went to this Russian circus, and it was mind-boggling how good they are. And of course, went to the ballet. My daughter was a ballerina, and there was a lot to enjoy too.
Yeah. Now the series itself got heated, clearly, and there was a lot of angst on both sides. I have heard that it was called, and I don't want to put the word war into it tritely, but it was becoming a war on ice, and it was basically communism versus capitalism. Did you feel that in the dressing room? I know the media played it that way. And was there a sense of hatred towards your opposition at the time?
Well, there was. And unfortunately, we hated them, but we should have hated the system, not them. Because I am really glad that we got to meet Tretiak and some of these guys. And Tretiak's English is pretty good, so we got to know him pretty well. But there was different, no question about it. It was our way against their way. But I know especially me, if we don't win, oh my God, I'm going to be part of the worst team in the history of Canadian hockey. And I'll tell you what, and the interesting thing, Rod, After I scored that goal well, I should just how that happened. I don't think we talked about that. Did we have that leading up to scoring the goal?
Yeah.
Well, what happened? The game, of course, we tied the game. Cornway scores, we tied the game. And
I mean, by the way, again, you had to win the series, you had to win the game. A tie, the Soviets technically would have won. So you were down and you came back, Cornway scores, and then you take it from there.
Okay. So Clark Ellis and I were out in the ice, and we come off the ice with about a minute and a half left in the game. And he sent out Esposito, Cornway, and Peter Mahovlich. And then he came down to us and he said, guys, if there's any time left, you take it. Okay. So we're sitting there, and Rod, I did something I never did before, never did it again. At about the 1 minute mark, I got to get on the ice. And it was just like we got to win this game. And I started yelling at Peter Mahovlich, the left winger. And Frank happened to be sitting beside me. What the hell are you doing? And well, thank goodness Peter come off. I jump over the boards, and 10 seconds later, I score that goal. And maybe it was because I'd scored the winning goal in the two previous games. But like, can you imagine me doing that? And imagine if the Russians would have gone down and scored a goal and we'd have lost. See, I'd be living in Siberia today, not in Canada. But it's amazing. Like, I think.
But if Treacy had made that save, goodness.
Well, that's mean. Oh, I got to tell you the great story about Treacy. I get inducted in the International Hockey Hall of Fame, and it was over in Stockholm back, I think, in 12. And unbeknownst to me, they had Tretiak introduce me. And so Forsberg went in that there, and guy played for the Leafs from captain from Sweden. What I just
Matt Sundin.
Oh, Sundin, yeah. Well, anyway, my turn to be inducted. Tretiak walks out, and they'd kept it a secret because we'd been there for a week watching some of the games. So, I mean, he had to say some nice things about me, so he did. And then he looks at me and he said, Paul, I know why you scored that goal. I've looked at those replays over and over again. And Paul, the reason you scored that goal, and he stopped for about 5 or 6 seconds and looked at me. Paul, the reason you scored it was very bad goaltending. And it just broke everybody up. And then he came and gave me a bear hug. And I've got to know him. And it's really interesting. My grandson, Alton McDermott, who plays hockey over in Canisius, and Tretiak's grandson, who was a goaltender, they've been talking because there's several books. Sean Mitten wrote a book, and they've had conversations about what it was like to grow up and you have a famous grandfather, father, and all that kind of stuff. So Alton has really learned so much. I think his name is Jake or something. But it's amazing how that was our grandsons and contribute to the book because they quote both of them in this book.
Do you remember? Amazing. Do you remember you and I, our good pal Bruce Bowser, play golf at Lionhead a few years ago with young rookie Nick Antropov of the Leafs? I don't know if you remember. I remember he spoke at the time. He speaks great English. Nick's a fabulous person, but I'll never forget sitting up. And I said to him, well, 4 holes in, and I don't think he kind of knew who you were, but he kind of knew who you were. And I said, do you know who that is? And I'll never forget his answer. And he looks, and he's a big, tall kid, right? Skinny kid. He goes, yes, Russian killer.
No, but he also added, my family hate him.
Yes, my family hate him. So Henderson took a wild stab for it and fell. Here's a shot, another shot. He scores. Henderson has scored for Canada. How many times have you heard it? How many times have you watched it? I know that picture lives forever as well with Yvon Cornway and you together. It's unimaginable. That goal had to change your life.
Oh, it changed it completely. But, for 5 years after that, every time I heard that thing, like I could feel it in my.
Wow.
Now I've probably listened to it thousands of times by now. It doesn't do that anymore, but it's still just every time, like, you get a little older and like, how the Sam hell did you ever score the last 3 winning goals? And I never ever thought of scoring 1 winning goal. All I was out there to don't let the other Russians score. And so when you think about it, maybe because I'm getting, I'm close to 80 years of age now, but I think, I probably enjoy it every bit as much now as I did by then. Because, obviously, the impact and the impact that a lot of people, and I still get, I got to tell you this one story. I get a letter at Christmas time from this lady. And she says, Paul, I want to thank you for the greatest Christmas we've ever had. She went on to tell the story. Her and her husband were getting a divorce. And the afternoon of the game, they were going to sign the papers. And he'd come over to where they were living, or she was living, and they were going to sign the papers. And the start of the third period, he looked in and he said, can I come in and watch the third period? And they weren't getting along very well. And so come in. So anyway, they sit down and Esposito scores and they did a little cheering, and then Cornway scores. Well, when I scored the goal, they went crazy. They were cheering and they found their arms around one another. And the long story short, what the hell are we doing getting divorced? And he said, Paul, if you had not scored that goal, my husband would have walked out that door. I would have signed the paper and we would not be married today. And we got some counseling. We put our marriage back. We've never been happier. Thank you for scoring that goal. Imagine that.
You saved marriages. I would imagine 9 months after September, there were a lot of young boys who suddenly were named Paul or perhaps even Henderson. I mean, the impact the goal had, you said it, not only on lives in Canada, but also lives in the Soviet Union. The world obviously changed. The walls came down. Russian hockey players started to become professionals down the road. It was such a different time when you scored. And I'll never forget the aftermath and the melee on the ice. And I was watching, like most Canadians, in a elementary school on a black and white television, and we're jumping up and cheering. I don't think I've ever asked you this, and I've known you for such a long time. What happened in the dressing room after?
Well, the amazing part is, I think most of us, Rod, were just done. And there was no jumping around or crazy or anything like that. And my wife's favorite picture of me is sitting there. And I probably didn't take off my skates for probably 30, 35 minutes. And we were basically, looking at one across, a little smile. And I know I had 2 beers before I even took off my skates. We just sat there and there was nobody going crazy. It was just, we've done it. We went to war together. And even yet today, we get together with one of the guys who was in the spirit, that series, and we went to war. And there's just that wonderful warm feeling. But I think we were just all done. We had given it everything we had. Everybody was on that ice. We're just exhausted. But great memories, great memories.
So you're exhausted after these 8 incredible games. You score the goal of your life, the goal of the century. What happens when you come home?
Well, it was overwhelming. Too much, too quickly. I mean, if I'd have been a Hall of Famer, that kind of stuff, but it was just everybody, too much. And really the reality was that we had to go right back into it. Training camp had been going on and everything like that. And unfortunately, we would have been trying to negotiate a contract with Ballard, and we weren't getting very far. And so, yeah, it was a tough time. And when I got back playing, I pulled my groin, a really bad groin pull, and so I was hampered in a lot of ways. But it was just and my wife is a very private person, and she kept the house private. But there was no way you could do it, and everybody wanted something, wanted me to do this. There was all kinds of endorsement deals came along and everything, and of course playing with Ballard, and we had lost so many guys to the WHA, and I knew we didn't have a hope in heck of winning the Stanley Cup, and that's why you play hockey. And so I looked at everything, but I had no spiritual side to my life at this point. I had no, and but I think that I would say to Eleanor, and I knew that I had everything I wanted. I had a great wife and a family, and I was doing well financially and everything like that. But I would say to Eleanor, there's something missing. Like, I'm just not content. And I don't know what the hell's missing, because I got everything. And so it was a very frustrating time. And then when I get on the ice and the game would be tied, I could just feel, that people wanted me to score. And then I tried to do things that I could, you got to play within what your gifts are. And I tried to do more than I could, and it didn't go well, and I was hurt, and very frustrating time. Actually went from a huge high till about 2 months later. It was probably one of the lowest points of my life.
But you were able to bounce back through your faith. The goal obviously changed your life, but maybe that also precipitated a larger change in your life.
Well, I didn't have any spiritual side. And then a guy named Mel Stevens asked me to look at, and he asked me to work at his hockey school up at Teen Ranch. And I said, yeah, I do that. What do you pay? And he said, well, it's a Christian school. He says, we can't afford to pay. I looked at him, do you not know who you're talking to? And then he said to me, Rod, he said, I see you interviewed on television. You always seem to have got an edge to yourself. He said, you don't seem like you're a very contented guy. You seem to be very frustrated. And no one, like I said, am I wearing a sign or some bloody thing? Nobody said that. And then he said to me, Paul, have you ever looked at the spiritual side of life? And I said, no, I'm not into politics. I'm not into religion. You just get into arguments. And then he said to me, Paul, I can teach you how to live freely and lightly and enjoy every day.
And you've done that.
And I spent 2 years, and he was the guy that really encouraged me to look at Christianity and taught me how to pray. And that changed. I became a Christian. That was in February of 73. And I became a Christian in March of 75. And then I got a great mentor. We went to Birmingham, Alabama with the Birmingham Bulls, and a wonderful mentor, a businessman, got me in a men's group for 5 years.
When you think about it, it was so glad that you had this faith now, because guess where you were playing? The baby Bulls. That must have been a circus.
Well, it was. But our family loved it. We get down in there, and I put our girls in a Christian school, and we got involved in a great church, and that changed my life from the inside out. Really did. And we were down there for 8 years, and it was a great experience.
When you look back on your hockey career, and I know you've got the goal, and everybody wants to talk to you about the goals, but there has to be so many other things that you're proud of. I mean, you had a glorious career. And again, I'm your friend, but I think you're a Hockey Hall of Famer. I know you've been inducted into so many different halls, and the Order of Canada, by the way, that is an incredible honor because of all of the things that you've done. But when you look back on your hockey career, what do you think hockey gave to Paul Henderson beyond the goal?
Well, it gave me, like, I grew up very poor. Never got a pair of skates till I was 10. I hated being poor. And my desire is, when I was in grade 5, I started practicing my autograph, because all my heroes were hockey players, Gordie Howe in particular. But I knew you make good money in a hurry. And if I could get to the NHL, then and so it was just, I was being, fear of failure, like fear of being poor. And but when I look back on it now, that you got to have dreams, and this was my goal. And so I did the things and prevented myself from making stupid mistakes too. Because I think when you have a goal, as you learn later in life, that I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, and I took care of myself. And then, unfortunately, I met Eleanor. I was 16 when I met Eleanor. She was 15, and I knew immediately this is a girl that I was going to marry. And well, you've met her. She is just gold, heart and soul of the Henderson clan. And I can tell you, if I had a choice of all the women in the world,
I know she's gone through life probably going, she's Paul Henderson's wife, but truly, you are Eleanor Henderson's husband. I mean, Nora is an amazing lady.
Oh, she is. She's heart and soul of everything. And so, when I look at that, I'm very, very, I know I'm blessed. And the really good thing is I've learned that she's a lot smarter than me. And I do not make any decision without discussing with her. And I figured I had to do everything people asked me to do, go there. And she says, Paul, you're not doing that anymore. And she says no a lot better than I did. And I think that especially when I started the ministry and everything like that, I never took holidays for 5 years. I was so passionate about trying to get, Bowsers and guys like that into men's group, help them to look at. And so today she sets my schedule, and we've got a great relationship, and unfortunately we got kids, got great marriages and good athletes. And so I can tell you, Rod, I wouldn't change place with anybody in the world. I don't want to be a day older. I don't want to be a day less. And I'm firmly convinced that you got today, live it the best way you can, try to be a blessing to others, and don't get a big head, because that is no good.
Yeah. And that perspective has really probably carried you through your health challenges through the I guess, what is it, almost been 10 years now? And
12,
12 years. And yeah, you are, you are someone who has had cancer, but Henny, you are also a cancer survivor. You're a cancer survivor. I mean, what has this period in your life been like?
Well, the good news is where faith is, when you have no fear of dying, and the Bible tells you, don't worry, don't be fearful. And so I try not to worry about anything. You got to be concerned, obviously, for your family and friends and everything like that. But the freedom you have when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less, that you're very, very, you're in a good space. And so I have found over the years, like, I can tell you, there's probably 500 men that have been praying for me for the last 10 years, and encouragement, and those type of things. And so I'm just very content. I'm in a great space, and got great neighbors. We've been in this house 32 years, and I tell Eleanor, the only way you're getting me out of here is a pine box, because we're going nowhere.
So the 40th anniversary of this Summit Series, and the great goal, you could not attend, I think, because you were, going through your battle at the time, your health battle. This is the 50th. And I know through the years, everyone has become close. I mean, I think there's always, teammates and rivals, whatever, but I think Canadian players generally have become very fond also of the Tretiaks and the Yakushevs. And there is this bond that you will have forever, interrupted, of course, this year by what's going on overseas. Has to be something that really, have you talked to any of those former Soviet players, Russian players? It's clearly not good. There's not going to be some sort of reunion, certainly not in Moscow. All the stuff that's gone on in Ukraine, what kind of opinion do you have on that? And how has that changed your celebration this year of the 50th anniversary?
Well, to be truthful, Rod, it doesn't change anything. This is a Canadian event.
Yeah.
This is a Canadian celebration. And so we don't need the Russians to pray. Yeah. And I don't think sometimes they're very good in Canada of celebrating. And so
no,
doesn't bother me one iota. that we don't have. Maybe it could have been okay. We're certainly not going to go over there. From my perspective, it's a Canadian event.
Yeah.
And we're going to celebrate. And so hopefully, but we've lost 10 guys off that team.
Yeah. Sadly, Tony Esposito most recently, so many guys, and it's going to happen, right?
Well, and we don't know exactly because, with the politics with going on in the world, everything got set back. So all the planning and everything like that. And so we were talking about doing an event in every city, but now it looks like there's going to be whatever it is, we'll do it, but we'll celebrate. But from my perspective, this is a Canadian event.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're going to celebrate.
Exactly. It is bizarre, though, to think of the incredible irony that there was a Cold War going on back then. And now there is, this that's going on overseas. And you never want politics. I mean, think about what that series did for hockey, did for sport, changed sport. I mean, 8 years later, people did know how good the Soviet Union was. And of course, the Americans won the Miracle on Ice at Lake Placid. And again, stuff started to change. It's remarkable with sport. And you must be, you're living testament to that, what sport can do to society and culture.
Well, especially Canada, and especially hockey.
Yeah.
Like Canada, hockey in Canada will bring this country together like nothing else that I know of. Politics won't, doesn't matter what it is. But there's just something in, and I love, Tarasov said this, and he said, we as Russians, we can skate with them, we can do everything. But he says we can't get what they have got. And that's the difference between, to me, democracy and communism. But I fear for our country today. I fear for the US. Like, we are going offside like crazy. Everybody's got rights. They want their own way. And I mean, that is disaster. You got to be there for one another. But when it's all about you, like, I would be petrified. I don't go on any media whatsoever, Twitter, anything. If I say one thing, just take it out of context, you get crucified. Yeah. A guy does an interview. Here's a perfect example. Guy did an interview with me right a few years ago, and we were talking about sportsmanship with my grandsons. The two of them are hockey players, and we were talking about sportsmanship. So then he brought up, and they said, "Well, what about that goal? And what about Bobby Clark slashing that guy?" And I said, "Well, in terms of sportsmanship, no place in that for sportsmanship." But I said, Bobby Clark plays the game. He's always played that game and always will play the game. The guy comes out and says that, he was the worst, but he didn't put it into context. And that made me very, very wary of, and I didn't know this guy very well, but, to me, he was a sleazebag. He just wanted to make a point. I had to go back to Clarkey, and Clarkey was pissed off too. Well, of course he would have been. I said, and so Clarkey and I are fine today. In fact, I did an interview last week, and the guy said, did you and Clark ever make up? Yeah. So there's what, that's what drives me crazy about a lot of things. And
and I live in that world, and that drives me crazy about the stuff that, you live in this little clip world, and the clip lives forever. But, the clip that will always live forever is your goal. And a couple little things I want to, before we have to go, and I thank you. You're so generous with your time. We talked about helmets, and we talked about that Yofa. Now, this is not your helmet, but this helmet, I remember as a 10-year-old, remember the CCM's helmets they used to have? They were like, and you had one. They were a little thinner. Red Berenson wore them. A few guys wore them. They were very thin. But I'm pretty sure you might have been the first guy to have this style of helmet, which, by the way, hasn't changed much through the years. And I'm sure you knew, but when you scored that goal and you had that series, every kid in Canada wanted the Paul Henderson helmet, the Henderson helmet. How did it? I mean, I think you were the first guy to wear that kind of, because it was either the big salad bowl or that little CCM thing.
Here's the story. I'm playing for Detroit Red Wings. I'm in front of the net, trying to screamed the goaltender, Doug Barkley, let a slap shot go, hit me right here. Out cold. In the hospital for 3 days, they come out and you got to wear a helmet. And I did not want to wear a helmet. No one, So anyway, I have to can't play without it. So I finished off the year and I had no intention whatsoever of putting the helmet back on. That summer, CCM came and offered me an endorsement deal. And my wife was saying, Paul, keep the bloody helmet on, So when they told me what they were willing to pay me, I thought, oh my God. The year before, Makita put one on and he won the scoring race. And so I go to training camp and we're in training camp and I put the helmet on and Sid Abel came to me and he says, Paul, he said, we don't want any of our players wearing helmets. And I said to him, well, Sid, this is what they've offered me, this deal. And it was hell. And I said, this is what they're paying me. And he said, bullshit. He said, I want to see the contract. So I got the contract and showed to him. And I said, here's the deal. If you don't think I'm playing well, I will take it off. But if I'm playing well, I think that I should be able to make this money. And he said, okay. Well, the great thing for me, the 8th game of the series of the year, New York come in, the Rangers. We beat them 5-3. I got 4 goals and 1 assist. And Sid come up to me after and he said, I've got no problem with you wearing a helmet. And that was the story. Like you talk about, look over my life, 4 goals. Gordie Howe never scored 4 goals in a game in his life. And I get those. And so, and the CCM was a great, I should have. I mean, they were, and even when I jumped to the WHA, they knew that we'd done such a great job. They continued to pay me when I was down playing in the, there you go. And I've had several people say, my parents bought me a helmet for Christmas and it wasn't CCM. And I told them, take the bloody thing back.
That happened to me. That happened to me. They gave me a Winwell, nothing against Winwell, but it was like a salad bowl. And, I didn't like the salad bowls at the time. Makita wore the salad bowl. A few other guys wore it. And I said, no, and I cried. I actually cried. And my parents took it back to Zellers and they got me. And when I got the Henderson helmet, I will never forget. But think about this for a second. Think about Sid. If they don't allow you to wear the helmet, okay, I'm just thinking aloud. Maybe you don't do the endorsement deal, right? Then you go to the Summit Series and you hit your head on the ice and that concussion is really bad that you can't go back in those games. This might have been this helmet might have won the Summit Series.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. I have a concussion with an arm. I probably, well, then who knows?
Yeah. So the other one I want to ask you about is your number, because I'm really into numbers. And when I was growing up, I'm sure you too. When you were growing up, kid had a famous number, and the numbers at the time, and this is no due respect to you, the numbers to wear when I was growing up, the hot numbers were 4 for or Belleville, 9 for Hull or Howe, 7 for Espo, and maybe even, I would say, Tim Horton. But not many people wore 19. Larry Robinson wore it a little bit after, but there weren't many, you know what I mean? Like, take me to, how did you get 19?
My wife's birthday is March 19th.
Wow. I did not know that.
You don't, that's why.
So here's the other thing, Henny. So 19, again, I think you know where I'm going with the numbers, and all the kids, you would wear them. And obviously kids later wore 99. So a young kid in Saskatchewan sees the goal that you score and it becomes his number. And his name was Brian Trottier. And he made 19 after you and Larry Robinson, I suppose. And then Steve Yzerman's hero is Brian Trottier. And now one of the most famous numbers, and now that they're so famous, 19, that they won't give it away, they turn it around to make it 91. Your number echoes throughout hockey history. And you know who we have to thank? Your wife. Your wife. Isn't that, I think that's just great symmetry.
It is. It's so fun to look back and to think, well, how did this happen, or why did it happen? And like you know me, like I've been blessed above and beyond. Like I should never. one of my buddies, Ricky Gates, we played golf at Mississauga. This is back in when I was really in bad shape.
The husband of Barb Underhill, by the way.
Exactly. And he went home and told Barb, he said, I think I played the last game with Henny. He's got that cancer look at him. And 2 weeks later, I get into a clinical study at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And that saved my life. The only thing they offered me in Canada was chemotherapy, and I knew my body. I wasn't going to do it, and got into that. And now today, I'm just still kicking here all these years later.
Yeah, you play lots of golf. Are you still a huge hockey fan? I know every time I've seen you. And are you a Leaf fan?
Oh, I'm still a Leaf fan. God, I think they're one of the most. I love watching them. They're an exciting team to play. I mean, gosh, they've got such talent on there. And I hated that. I would have chosen any team for them to play against except for Tampa.
I didn't like the playoff format.
I didn't like that either. And and God, they had it and but that's hockey. We lost the seventh. I was in Detroit. Both years we should have won. I really believe that today, and I think the Leafs should have, but they played the worst again. And I told you about junior hockey. Anyway, I'm a big Leaf fan. I cheer for the Leafs big time. I cheer for the Raptors. I cheer for the Blue Jays. I'm Toronto through and through.
Yeah, you are a huge sport. And I was going to ask you, a lot of resumes, including your incredible resume, is minus a Stanley Cup. But anyone living in Toronto over the last 55 years has been minus a Stanley Cup. I mean, it goes to show you, especially back when you played as well, and you played in the original six era, people go, only 6 teams. Well, it was still very hard to win a Stanley Cup, and it still is the hardest trophy to win.
Well, and I'll tell you another story. The WHA come along, and Johnny Bassett wanted to sign me. And I said, and the other teams were after me too. And I said to Johnny, I'd like to go and take the money, but I've never won the Stanley Cup. And so and he said, well, Paul, I've signed Frank Mahovlich. Why don't you talk to Frank? So I phoned Frank, and Frank says, yes, I've agreed. I'm going to play for the Toros. And I said, God, Frank, I'd love to take the money, but I've never won the Stanley Cup. And he said to me, Paul, if you want to win the Stanley Cup, you better get traded out of Toronto. And this Frank Mahoney said, if they don't have it upstairs, they never get it on the ice. And they don't have a hope in hell of winning the Stanley Cup. Frank Mahoney said that to me. I went back when Ellen and I talked about it, gone. And the best thing we ever did was get out of town and get away from Harold Ballard.
Yeah, for sure.
But imagine that, Frank. And again, you look at it, Paul, you will never win a Stanley Cup. If you don't have it upstairs, you'll never get it on the ice. And as long as he's around, they'll never win. Is that prophetic or what?
Yeah, no kidding. Henny, I can't thank you enough for spending this time. I you know how much I care about you. And the other thing is too, I guess, when you start, and I know I am too, and you kind of think, how do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered for the guy who scored the goal? Of course, you're always going to. They got postage stamps. You're in every Hall of Fame imaginable. But when you look back, like decades and decades, when we're gathered in hockey heaven, how do you want to be remembered?
Just pretty good friend, pretty good father, pretty good grandfather. Enjoyed life, but what you who you are is determined by other people.
Yeah.
And how they perceive you. And so you can fool people for a while, but nobody fools everybody for a long time. And so I just tried to be consistent, but but my wife has probably taught me more by accident than anybody has on purpose. Like she doesn't even know how to spell competition. Or she would sooner lose a game than let the other people, win.
Yeah.
Like I try to beat you tiddlywinks. Like,
you're competitive.
So anyway, just
Yeah.
one day at a time, buddy, and just live it to the fullest. Live it to the fullest.
But you are wrong about one thing. You're not a pretty good friend. You're not a pretty good guy. You're not a pretty good husband. You're not a pretty good father and grandfather. You are a great friend and a great grandfather, and you're a great man, and you're Canada's greatest hockey hero. Thank you on behalf of all Canadians, but thank you for the last 50 years celebrating my birthday, and thank you for the goal. Thank you for the goal, Paul Henderson.
Well, I'm thinking of taking singing lessons so I can do a better job on the 28th when I sing to you, okay?
Happy
Ain't no hope
50th.
in there, buddy.
Yeah, happy 50th. Can't wait to see you on the golf course. Stay safe, stay healthy. Cheers. So happy to have Paul Henderson. So thankful to have Paul Henderson still around. He went through some huge health challenges, but celebrating the 50th anniversary of the goal of the century, the goal of a lifetime this year with his Canadian mates and with the rest of a nation, and also next year celebrating his 80th birthday. And so glad that he's healthy and playing golf and enjoying his family and his kids and his grandkids and doing well right now. So thank you, Paul Henderson, for doing what you do, being Paul Henderson. And thank you again for scoring that great goal back 50 years ago. Thanks to our sponsors, thanks to North Star, thanks to you. We will see you next time when we all get together once again for the Rodcast.
The Rodcast with Rod Black, brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.